So let's continue our discussion on client-server architecture. Just a quick recap of what we learned in last session. So client-server architecture, as the name says, there are two entities involved, client and server. Server is the entity which has desired resources that it will provide, and client is the entity that is requesting for the resource. Right? So client requests the server with the resource, and server in turn responds with the desired resource. Right? There can be multiple clients, obviously, requesting the server for the resource. So client 1, let's say client 2, client 3, client 4 and client 5. Now if server is serving same content to all the clients based on their request, then we generally say that the response is static. That means the website is serving static content to us. Irrespective of who is opening the content is same. Right? But if the content served actually is user specific and varies according to the user, then we say that the website is dynamic. So this is what we learned, right? So now the complete angle, the complete section, I should say, has two angles to it, two portions to it. One is the client side section and the other is the server side section. So let's discuss both these sections one by one in detail. Let's talk about the client side section first. Now the client side section is your browser, right? Now when you are opening a website, your browser is actually not worried about the content of the website. All your browser does is request the server for the resource. Server has to decide what content to serve, whether it has to serve same content to everybody or it has to use some logic to serve user specific content. That is the headache of the server, right? Browser is not taking that attention. What browser does is just put up a request to the server, and server then comes up with the response. At the browser end, all we are concerned about is that we should have relevant files to show that result, right? And by that relevant files, I mean generally the presentation part of the web page is handled by HTML and CSS. HTML to decide the structure of the web page, CSS to make it look better, and JavaScript to have the desired behavior. So that means the server will return the HTML, CSS and JavaScript code that the browser has to display to the user. Right? So at the client side, now the term we generally use is the front end side of it. This is the common term. Now at the front end side, we are worried about the presentation of data, and we are worried that the website should be responsive, user clicks should be handled, and user should be able to perform different operations, right? So that means at the front end angle of this complete process, we are worried about the presentation part of data. It should look good, it should be there, user should be able to interact with it, right? We are not worried about that data. The browser is actually not concerned about the data. Browser is just contacting server for the data, and server is then displaying relevant information. Now what happens at the server side? Now the server side of it is generally referred to as backend side of it. There's no hyphen, this is just backend. So server side is referred to as backend. Now what does backend logic mean, or what task the server has to perform? First of all, if I as a Facebook user, I am contacting Facebook server for some information, then Facebook server, the step one that Facebook server will do is authenticate. Figure out whether I am a valid server or not. That means server must have a server will in this case have a database where it is storing list of all relevant users, and if I am putting up a request, then server will check whether I am a relevant user or not. If I am a relevant user, then server will use some logic, some calculation, some code to figure out what is the right content that should be served to me. So that means that complete logic of what data to show and who to show, that actually is handled by the backend part. So that is handled by the server part. So the code to make that happen actually is the backend code that we are writing. So this is what the complete process involves. Client side code or front end code to show the data, server side part or backend part to actually get you the right data. So this is how complete process works. So as discussed, our complete course is divided in two modules, front end module and back end module. We will cover front end module first and then move to back end module. In front end module, HTML, CSS and JavaScript, all concerned about the presentation and responsiveness of website. And in the back end section, we'll learn how to write server logics and how to code it using Node.js. Thank you.